Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we have some updated BR changes from the other day, and obviously when it came to the planned BR changes we saw before, there was a lot of discussion around them, and also generally a lot of them which were very much all over the place, especially when it came to aviation. And now we have some comments, I suppose, from the team of Gaijin about the changes and what they're looking to change. Now, the thing is, when it comes to this stuff, this was posted yesterday, so I apologize that I'm getting to it now. It was posted a day after the initial planned BR changes came out, which seems completely crazy. The amount of changes which they've either reverted or which they're going forward with seems just insane to me to work out, over a day's period, like going through everything, unless, these decisions are being made from a snap decision point of view. And this is where I like getting into conspiracy theories. And that's all this is, by the way. So don't take it as anything else. One of the things that when it comes to these like updated things that I've thought for a while, because I find it very hard to believe a company or individuals in a company would make split decisions based on very, very quick feedback, which could easily be opinionated or easily be emotionally driven or anything like that. One of the interesting things is they already have planned out these updated PR changes beforehand, and therefore the reason why you do something like this is because you understand that some of the changes you either want to make or don't want to make are going to get pushback, so therefore you push them through anyway. Therefore it creates debate around the BR changes, therefore it gets more people involved in them, therefore it gets more people to talk about them, and therefore on top of that they get publicized more. That's the first one. Or what you're trying to do is the other option, where the other option is a lot more facetious, which is why I highly doubt it. I highly doubt this whole thing, to be honest, but it's just something interesting to think about. What you would do is you would make a bunch of BR changes, hoping to get some of them through, because they won't be discussed, because people will be focused on the major ones, which always happens. There is a bunch of propeller aviation changes that are happening, which are crazy, but in the updated article, none of them are talked about because everybody's super focused on the jets. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to think it like that way. Or it could just be very simple, that they've had a lot of feedback very quickly and they're like, okay, time to answer it in a day. But yeah, it just seems too convenient to me. I don't know what else to say. Anyway, let's get into the updated changes. So the first one in the post, which you can find in the description, it says to improve the situation with certain top-tier aircraft, such as the MiG-21 F-13 and the PFM, the MiG-19 All-Series, the J-72, the J-6A, and the F-100 All-Series, we initially intended to reduce their battle rating by one step, since their combat efficiency is close to minimal at their BR. But taking into account active discussion against such reductions, these aircraft won't be affected in the current changes. So they're not moving any of these aircraft. They're going to stay exactly where they were before, because of the discussions around them. Now, I understand that you want to placate community members and make them feel like they're being listened to when it comes to these things, but if you're going along this route, like if you're going to just leave them where they are and then they have exactly the same stats next time, are you going to do the same thing again? And we're just going to go around in this circle where you have vehicles which are performing poorly and they're just getting worse and worse and worse as new stuff gets added. Is that just what's going to happen now? So how do we fix these things, right? Or these things are at the lower end of their bracket, but that's okay. And, so because some aircraft have to be better than others when it comes to the game, right? Not everything has to be meta, as we've talked about before, because that's impossible. So, yeah, that one's a weird one to me. I understand why some of them would have been going down, like the J72 and the MiG-21 F-13. Like, one of the things we've got to start doing, which I'm not seeing, okay, and this is something that's very crucial when it comes to understanding all of this stuff. We have to work out why people are doing bad in these machines, right? You can't just turn around and just say they're doing bad because they're bad players, okay? Or they're doing bad because, you know, they're major nation players, or whatever theory you have in your head. Because this is affecting the Chinese vehicles, a very minor nation, which supposedly is played by very good players. And it's also affecting French with the F-100s, right? So you've got to ask yourself, what's going on? And these are the discussions that have to happen between people. Not the okay, I disagree with this because I can do this in it, or I've seen people do this in it. You've got to work out, why are they on the lower end? What's going on with them? What are people struggling with? And then maybe we can sort that out, or try and help people with understanding how to play these vehicles. You know, a classic one is the MiG-21 F-13. It's got great flight performance, you know. It's really good at being able to get on target. It's really good at controlling a engagement. Its weaponry is absolute trash. Really, really bad, right? So from that point of view, obviously the issue is not going to be how you engage, unless you're turn fighting stuff like Sagittarios. Instead what you're doing is you got to work out, how do you make the most out of that armament? And you do stuff like that by going into the test drive, going into the mission editor, creating scenarios, and learning how to use the guns. The next one is battle ratings for the Yak-38, Yak-38M, the AS675 Otsu, the HEI, the A4B and E, the G91R All Series, and the P63A5, the 262A2A, the Ki-200, the Yak-1517, and the J28B will not be reconsidered as well. We will continue to monitor their efficiency. So they will not be reconsidered as well. What does that mean? Because as well as what? Do you mean then they're not going to move them, or they are going to move them? Because if the way that I put it, if someone says these will not be reconsidered, then therefore they will keep their BR changes happening, right? But why is it written like this? Who's written it like this? Okay, well, let's go it from both sides. If they're reversing the changes, fair enough, but at the same time, we've got to, you know, try and do something about stuff like the Yak-38, right? It's a terrible platform with good missiles, that's it. Either something has to be done to improve the platform, or the missiles have to be reduced, and therefore reduced in BR. Like, fix it by screwing with the weaponry. That's probably the best way of dealing with those things, to try and actually make them combat effective and fun to play, instead of just R60 launchers. The G91 should never go down in BR. It's a terrible mistake, and because of the AGMs. It doesn't matter about their aerialistic capabilities. Their ground realistic capabilities is way too strong as an AGM carrier and a dogfighter. Same with the A4E. The A4B, for some reason, wasn't put down when the A4E was, so we'll have to see what that goes on. The Yak-1517, I think we're fine at the BR, and the J28B I can understand, since it's probably the more powerful vampire, but yeah, we'll have to see what goes on with that. The next one is the Sagittario 2. Featuring perfect armaments, this aircraft has to have the BR increased, based on both her high combat efficiency and the fact that new aircraft will be moved to its current BR. So they are still moving stuff down to 9.0. I'm guessing that's talking about stuff like the Yak-38. And yeah, the Sagittario is really, really good. It's got great acceleration, the guns are amazing. It's just one of those machines which is a perfect dogfighter in a dogfighting meta. And yes, people are going to point to the repair cost and say, well, nobody's going to touch it when its repair cost is so high. People still touch the Saab 105 after its repair cost went to like 35k, because you get 10 free repairs, and in those free repairs you can actually spade the machine. That's what I did. I got 50 kills and like 3 deaths in it, because it's just an insane machine, right? The Sagittario 2, you can basically do the same thing. And just like the Lorraine 40T, as it goes up in BR, once it finds its place in the meta, then its repair cost goes down. This is how these things work, okay? It's how they've worked for a very long time. If you want them to preemptively change repair costs because of movements in BR, then they are guessing, they are guesstimating, and human error gets involved. And you don't want human error getting involved, because human error gives you stuff like the Sturm S with a really, really high repair cost and like a 9.3 BR. Now it's 8.3, I believe. It's either 8.3 or 8.7. It's been reduced over time many times in many different areas, and it's even got buffs to it, right? You don't want human error. Then we've got the CL-13 Mark IV for Italy. It's one of the most discussed changes, and whilst at the same time the aircraft is at the upper limits of the effectiveness of its rating, along with such aircraft as the MiG-15 BIS and the F-86, F-25 and 30, however, based on your comments, we will postpone the BR changes of the CL-13 Mark IV and reanalyze the vehicle. The rating of the MiG-15 BIS and the F-86, F-25 and 30, all series, will be increased. So the thing that was interesting about the CL-13 Mark IV, there was a post going around on Reddit about some individuals who had played it a lot to up its BR. And this got a lot of people showing how, stupid player statistics are, and how, stupid, and how you shouldn't look at them, or because you should take opinions instead, because they can be manipulated. Now, one of the Gaijin team actually had a really good point in it, and I'll just read it to you, because it's much easier to read instead of just try and explain it. Where was it? Let's find it. Here we go. The devs already checked this one out, and in RRB alone, the aircraft had over 2,000 flyouts in the period, which between the last BR pass from more than just these users too. For the last 4 to 5 BR reviews, it also had a consistent upward trend since before the F-86s were moved down to 8.3, which is why it was not moved down at the time. So it's a little bit over-exaggerated in this topic to say they're solely responsible. Contributed, yes, but in the same way, most of us playing the Buccaneer S1 in the past month also have to see it go up. So yeah, the fact is, like, trying to manipulate stats by, getting good players to play something will have an effect, of course, but to say it's the sole reason for things happening is very, very naive. One of the things that has to be understood that I think gets forgotten about a lot is the amount of people who actually play War Thunder. When I was logged in yesterday, doing the video for the export order, there was casually 106,000 people online at that point, right? And that's pretty usual for a weekend. Now, think about how many vehicles that are in the game, and think about how many times, you see specific vehicles. That's a hell of a lot of data. And if you think 3 people are going to mastermind, specific vehicles being able to move up or move down, or even a few more people than that, then you're barking up the wrong tree. It's kind of like throwing a pebble into a, pool of rocks. It's going to have some effect, but the pool of rocks themselves are going to have much more of an effect than the pebble. And one thing that has to be noted is other things have to be taken into account when it comes to especially RRB. So the first thing is, what are the matchups? What are the maps, right? And then also the fact that gets forgotten about every time when it comes to RRB. What you can do in RRB is you can force stack, and they don't have the same limits on it like they do in ground. And I don't know about naval, but at least in ground. In ground, if you get a squad of 4, then you are generally going to go up against a squad of 4. Or you're going to go up against 2 squads of 2, or maybe 2 squads of 3. The idea of this is to balance out the different squads. In air, that isn't the case. You can force stack, so you can get 4 people together, and you can just annihilate. There are squadrons out there which are dedicated to getting stuff like 90 to 100% win rates in certain ARB brackets because this is all they do, and they play basically to win, and if they lose, they're very, very annoyed. I've even had people who have had perfect accounts when it comes to War Thunder lose a match and restart on a new account. Right? There are people who do this, and it's very easy to manipulate stuff in RRB, so I'm guessing we're going to see more of this stuff going forward. But the thing that you've got to understand is now you've been public about it, and now you've told people that you're doing it in a very, very public way. Now they can track you doing it, right? So now the whole plan is foiled. Like, oh God. If you want to do stuff like this, you can't be public about it to praise your own egos, because it's not going to work. Because now they know you're doing it, so now they're cognizant of it, and then they're just going to make sure it can't happen again. So well done, you've proved absolutely nothing because it's not going up in BR. You had one day of great memes and everybody thinking it had a huge effect, and it results to absolutely nothing. Well done. They also say the following aircraft, which are far superior in combat efficiency to other aircraft of their own and neighboring ranks, and therefore require a BR rise: the Yak-23, Yak-30, J-29F, Tu-4, the Vautour All Series, the Buccaneer S1 and S2, Su-17 M2, and B-57A. So that's worded badly, but I'm pretty sure it means that they're going up, and these ones aren't changing. So Yak-23 and Yak-30 and J-29F, all dogfighters. Obviously the meta is bees around a honeypot, so they're doing pretty well. Kind of surprised at the Yak-30. I do really enjoy it. It's a fantastic vehicle, but I haven't seen that many around. I've been playing the BR a lot, so maybe there's not a ton of them about, but we'll see after this change what's going to happen. The bombers make a lot of sense that they're going up in BR. As I said, the airfield buff that a lot of the jet bombers have got now, so basically they can get their bombs off and then go back to the airfield and sit there, or what they can do is they can use it as a defensive place, means that bombers are much more survivable than they used to be. So therefore they can get more bombs off, therefore they can get more points, therefore they can survive a lot longer. And the Tu-4 is still the Tu-4. It just climbs to space. And no matter how many times people ask me, why does this thing have a crazy repair cost? And I respond with, because they don't die, because they play like this, and people get annoyed at me, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist and that it's not fact. Otherwise, this would not keep happening over and over and over again, even with missiles around the place. Your suggestions concerning the BR changes for the A5C, CL-13B Mark VI, and F-86F40 are not corroborated by their efficiency indicators. Their BRs remain the same. So these were ones which are outside of the list, which people actually discussed. So the CL-13B Mark VI and F-86F40 have been a very high BR for a very long time. I think the F-40s are 9.3 right now. They're basically the best performing sabers with their sidewinders, the AIM-9Bs, and also the fact that they're extremely maneuverable and decently fast once you have the upgrades on them. Generally, I've done alright in them. I've had a pretty good time in them, but you do have to fly them very defensively, and it's really rough to do until you get the performance upgrades. So it definitely isn't a fun time playing them until, as I said, you get them decently modified, and then you're okay, but you're still not the best. There are a lot of better machines at the BRs than them, and I would personally like to see them go down, but let's put in this scenario, right? So this is an interesting one. Let's say something has a very high efficiency at the BR it's at. Let's say 9.3, okay? But it's obviously the performance of the vehicle, just when we look at its basic stats. So engine power, guns, missiles, whatever it is nowhere near as good as, you know, other vehicles at the same BR. So logically you'd want to drop it. So you drop it to 9.0. Now it still maintains that high efficiency it already had, but it does it at a lower BR because, you know, when we look at this plane, there's nothing like weird about it when it comes to, you know, its general playstyle. It's just a bog standard plane with just slightly worse characteristics. But now at the BR, where it has neutral or good characteristics compared to other vehicles, its repair cost is going to skyrocket because its efficiency is now through the roof. So what do you do with a vehicle like this, right? Do you keep it at the BR where it's at, maintain it so it actually has an okay repair cost, and therefore, you know, people can still play it and still try it? Or do you drop it in BR according to where people think it should be, then its repair cost skyrockets, and then you have the problem that those same people will bring up, where because it has a really high repair cost, therefore only really experienced players will play it, and therefore it'll go up in BR again. See? What do you do with a vehicle like that? Do you leave it at the BR, where it may struggle a little bit, or do you put it down and watch it just skyrocket? The A5C one is surprising for me personally. I always thought the A5C was a very good vehicle. To see it not go up is a surprise. It is very reliant on its missiles though, so that's probably why with only its missiles, you know, coming out, not too much of a surprise. And then the last one for aviation, you have the XB50. So the BR of the XB50 in RB will be increased from 3.7 to 4.0 after multiple players' suggestions and its combat efficiency analysis. The XB50 is a very, very strong aircraft. It climbs high, it has generally good dive, it has very good armament. The only issue with it isn't very multi-role. It's basically an air superiority fighter from high altitude, and that's really about it. But you can play around that at those BRs and win games with it. And I always see them doing well. They're fantastic aircraft. So to see it go up in BR, not too much of a surprise. So it still would be a go-to, I'm sure, for a lot of people to make SL, so definitely worth having a go with. And that is the aviation stuff. I have limited time right now because we're doing the touch drops for enlisted, so I will get to the ground vehicles and fleet stuff later on. I apologize for this. You'll either see the video later tonight or tomorrow. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Professor X 1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, BRFC 15, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, and then Kyle Kin, Barine, Lafouche, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.